Hello and welcome to the KanCare Ombudsman Liaison Training. In this module, we'll be covering some of the most frequently asked questions during the KanCare application process, and we'll be going over the Application Assistance folder, which are 3 documents our office uses when guiding someone during the application process. The application checklist, which is a tool to help the applicant stay organized. The documentation checklist, which will help the applicant know which type of paperwork they need to gather and submit with their application. And the application process flowchart and frequently asked questions document. That gives the applicant some answers to questions they'll likely have once they start the application process. So the application frequently asked questions we're going to be looking at today are: how do I apply for KanCare? Where do I send my applications? What if I have questions while I'm completing the application? How do I check the status of my application? What is the average wait time for an application to process? What can I do if I've been waiting longer than the average wait time for my application to process? How will I be notified that I have been approved or denied of KanCare? And what if I am denied KanCare and I believe that was due to a mistake? Let's start with the first question. There are 2 ways to apply. There are 2 paper applications or just 1 online application. If you apply online, it doesn't matter what age you are, if you have a disability or not, if you're pregnant or not, none of those things matter. You just apply online, whatever you type in. The program is intuitive and it'll take you to the next appropriate screen. If you apply on paper, you do want to pick the correct application just to save yourself from having to do a supplemental application. If you're 65 or older, or you're someone who's claiming a disability, whether you have a Social Security disability determination already or not, maybe you just have a pending case at the Social Security Administration, you're going to use the KanCare application for the elderly and persons with disabilities, or you will use the KanCare application for families with children if you're pregnant, if you're applying for a child who's under 19, or if you're a parent or caregiver of a child under 19. Where do I send my paper application? You're going to mail it or fax it to the KanCare Clearinghouse, and there's the contact information for that. And you're going to also want to make sure and send in your other documentation as much as possible with the initial application. If you don't have it gathered all right now, that's okay. Send the application in, but get it there to the clearinghouse as quickly as you can. Anything that you claim on the application, you may have to submit proof that those claims are correct. For example, proof of other health insurance, proof of your income, proof of resources and assets, things like that. You'll mail it to the KanCare Clearinghouse, P.O. Box 3599, Topeka, Kansas 66601, 9738, or fax to 1-800-498-1255 for the Family and Children Department, or for the Elderly and Persons with Disabilities Department is 1-844-264-6285. What if your case is more complicated or urgent? Well, then you're going to fax or mail a letter explaining the details of your case to the clearinghouse along with your application and the other documentation you submit. And then you always want to follow up with a phone call to the clearinghouse a few days later to confirm that they've actually received your application and your documentation, and if your case is more urgent, that they've received an explanation of why it's more urgent and that you've actually requested it to be processed more quickly. What if an applicant has questions on the application? Well, they can call the KanCare Clearinghouse customer service at 1-800-792-4884. The KanCare Clearinghouse will also assist in completing the application in person at their Topeka, Kansas location, located over at Forbes Field. They accept walk-ins, though appointments are preferred. If an applicant wants assistance completing the application, they can also call the KanCare Ombudsman office at 855-643-8180. Our volunteers help with in-person or over the phone completion of the application, or just with questions on the application. Who else assists with the KanCare application? Well, you can check out the Application Assistance Guide for more locations. This guide lists several different community organizations that assist with KanCare applications. So we are currently trying to locate as many different organizations that help people to complete KanCare applications so that consumers will know where to go to get that help. So far we've got over 50 counties and hope to have all 105 counties of Kansas on this guide soon. Again, at the end of this video there will be clear instructions on how to find this resource. Does your office provide application assistance? If so, please consider adding your information to this guide. If you do not provide application assistance, you're welcome to refer the applicant who needs help to the KanCare Ombudsman Office at 1-855-643-8180 or to one of the organizations on the Application Assistance Guide. Let's work together to reach more Kansans in need. If you do want to be added to this guide, please give that number a call at the KanCare Ombudsman Office and let us know you'd like to be added to our Application Assistance Guide. The Application Assistance folder. This folder was created by the KanCare Ombudsman Office, and it's a folder to help new applicants keep their application and additional documentation organized, know how to follow up after they've submitted their application so they can stay on top of the processing of their application and make sure there's no unneeded delays. And also it answers some frequently asked questions about the application process. Page 1 of the application checklist. We're going to go through this from top to bottom, just like our volunteers at the KanCare Ombudsman Office go through it with the applicants. At the top of the application checklist, we remind the applicant to keep copies of everything they send to the clearinghouse together in one folder for their own records. When you send in documentation to the clearinghouse, you always want to be sure and send copies, not the originals. The originals will not be returned to you. So if you've got some receipts that you're sending in to prove your expenses, you don't want to send the originals. If for some reason they never make it to the clearinghouse and the clearinghouse lets you know we never received those, you've got to resend them. If you've lost your originals, you've got to go back and get new receipts made. So not something you want to have to do. Also, we'd recommend making a copy of the KanCare application. So if for some reason that didn't make it to the clearinghouse, you would have a copy and you could just resend that copy rather than having to start all over again. Send proof of what you claim on the application. So depending on which program you're applying for and what you actually claim on the application, there's certain things that the KDHE eligibility team are going to ask for in additional documentation. For example, proof of income, proof of health insurance, proof of your medical representative, proof of resources or assets, proof of pending disability case, if that's applicable, proof of your medical expenses or work expenses, different things like that. The more that you can send in from the very beginning along with your application, the better. Some of these things do take a lot of time to get the documentation from the organization or agency. So if you're thinking of applying for KanCare, just immediately find out what documentation you're going to need to submit with your application and start gathering that documentation. How do I find out what documentation I'm going to need to provide? There is a documentation checklist for the KanCare application, so carefully review and submit the required documentation along with your application form. By sending all the required documentation with your application, it's going to be processed more quickly. Keep a very close eye on the mailbox. If other items are needed by the eligibility team, they will mail you a letter and notify you by mail. However, that need to request more information delays the whole application processing time. So send as much as you know, required documentation as you can along with your initial application. And very important, those letters that the applicant receives from KanCare, the requests for more documentation that come by mail, have deadlines. If the applicant does not submit required documentation by those deadlines, they may need to reapply. So the next thing on the application checklist, the left column, it has you give a check mark for everything you've sent to the clearinghouse. I've sent in my application, my proof of income, my proof of health insurance, my proof of resources, and if I have a pending disability case, I've sent that in also. And this isn't a complete list of everything you'll send in, but it is the basic things that you're going to send in. And then on the right-hand column, this is for you to keep in a folder for your own record, a copy of your application, a copy of your proof of income, a copy of your proof of health insurance, etc. That way, if something didn't make it there, all you have to do is make another copy and send it on. Here's some things to help you avoid some pitfalls when you fax required documentation to the clearinghouse. Every time you fax something to the clearinghouse, be sure to include a cover letter explaining what's being faxed, why you're sending that to them, and how many pages total you're faxing them. Be sure to fax everything at one time as much as possible, rather than sending 30 separate faxes of 30 different pieces of information. It'd probably be better to try to get it all collected and send it all at once. Of course, some things take a little bit longer to gather that information, so some things you may have to send in here and there, but as much as possible, send it together all at one time. Keep the fax receipt in your folder along with everything you've sent to the clearinghouse. You want to always keep one folder of, a copy of everything, and be sure to keep the fax receipts also. When you call the clearinghouse to make sure they've got the information they've received, if they aren't able to find it, you can look at that fax receipt, look at the date and the time that it was faxed, and give them the fax number it was sent from and the fax number it was sent to, and that will help them to find that information. After you've submitted your application, you're not really done. You want to be proactive with your application and make sure it's been received. Make sure you've got all your documentation that's required has been turned in and it's been received. So here's some steps to help you kind of follow through with that. Be sure to contact the clearinghouse after a few days if you mailed the application, or after about 48 hours if you faxed it. Ask for your case number. If they can give you a case number, that's confirmation that they've actually received your application. And then be sure and make note of that. Keep that note in your folder along with for your own records. Ask for confirmation that any additional documentation like bank statements and different things like that you sent was also received. And then make a note of what they said they received and who you spoke with that day. You can also ask that customer service rep if you see any notes in there that they're looking for additional documentation that you can start gathering. Also, watch your mailbox for further requests for new or updated information that the clearinghouse representative might not known about yet. Once KDHE eligibility gets your applications and starts processing it, often they will send out another letter for new or updated information. So you want to keep your eye on the mailbox and keep watching for that. As soon as you get those letters, open it, find out what further documentation is needed, and start gathering that and get it in as soon as you can. Every time you send more information, follow up with a phone call with the clearinghouse, confirming with them that they got the new documentation. And just be proactive. Stay on top of the application process. And again, always note who you spoke to that day, what day you called, that information for your own records. Are the hold times too long? Consumers may also try calling the clearinghouse after 5. The clearinghouse doors close at 5 p.m., but they continue to take calls through 7 p.m. Callers may find a shorter waiting time during these periods. Also, if you're trying to fax the clearinghouse and the fax machine was always busy for you, you could try faxing after 5 p.m. If you are waiting on hold and you get stuck on a loop while you're holding, that forces you to leave a message rather than allowing you to continue to hold for customer service, you can dial 0 twice. This will take you out of that loop and allow you to continue holding. We always recommend that the caller wait to speak to a representative instead of leaving a message and waiting for a return call. It could take quite a while to actually get that return call, plus you're playing phone tag with the clearinghouse. Just put some time aside if you have to call the clearinghouse, and be willing to hold and talk to that customer service representative so you can get your issue taken care of more quickly. The application process flowchart is the third document that's in the Application Assistance Guide. This resource provides a beginning to end guide for new KanCare applicants. So the types of questions it will cover are the 2 ways to file an application, and it provides the necessary links and phone numbers and address. It has who to call for application assistance, both phone or in person, where to send your application. It also answers questions about the application process. How do I check the status of my application? How long does it take to process an application? What should I watch for in the mail? What notices and deadlines do I need to be aware of? What if I don't have health insurance right now, but I need medical assistance? We do have a guide called the Medical Assistance for People Who Aren't Insured, and so that has some information about medical clinics that work on a sliding scale or for free throughout Kansas. Also, there's some pharmacy information, how to get there's some pharmacy discount coupons, saving up to 80% on medications. There's also some vision and dental programs in there that may work for free or on a sliding scale. So if someone is waiting on KanCare to process, or they were denied KanCare or denied insurance, but they need to go to the doctor, or they need help tomorrow, that's a good guide to take a look at. Finally, notification. How will I find out if I'm approved or denied? What can I do if I am denied and I believe that's a mistake? And then more frequently asked questions. What can I do if I feel I've been waiting too long for my application to be processed? And if I just need a denial letter for Marketplace, what can I do? Those are all questions we're going to answer in this video. The application assistance folder. If you are somebody that helps people fill out applications, you may find this useful. Again, it's got the application checklist that helps people stay on top of their application and avoid the pitfalls. It's got the frequently asked questions about the application process, and finally it's got the documentation checklist, so people know ahead of time what documentation they're going to need to gather and submit with their application, or as soon as they can submit it. How do I check my application status? That would be contacting the KanCare Clearinghouse, 1-800-792-4884. Doesn't matter if you've applied online or on paper, it would be contacting the KanCare Clearinghouse. If you want to find out, do they have your application? Do they have all the documentation from you so that your application is complete and can be processed? And then where is your application in the processing? How long does it take for an application to process? How long until I find out if I'm eligible once I submit my KanCare application? The Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, allows the state the following number of days to process a KanCare application. They allow 45 calendar days. There is an exception if the applicant has claimed a disability on the KanCare application, but they don't actually have that disability determined already with the Social Security Administration, but instead they just have a pending disability case, then the state is actually allowed 90 calendar days in those cases to process the application. The best way the applicant can help avoid delays is to make sure they're watching their mailbox for any additional letters from KanCare. Those letters will come by mail asking for more information or updated information. And without this, KDHE eligibility team cannot process your application to completion. So sometimes there are delays if the applicant hasn't submitted all of the information, and sometimes they only submit part of the correct information and not all of it. So make sure you're getting everything in, and really keep an eye on that mailbox just in case there's another request that you are not expecting. The KanCare Clearinghouse may send a letter asking for additional information which is required to process your application. Not turning in that documentation requested in a timely fashion will cause delays in application processing. Watch for deadlines on the letters. A missed deadline may cause a denial in services and cause you to have to reapply. Applicants waiting too long. If someone applied for KanCare and they feel they've been waiting too long for their application to process, find out what date they applied. If they don't know the exact date, get an approximate date. And if they've been waiting less than the days allotted by CMS, then explain to them about the normal processing time. For applicants waiting over the number of days allotted by CMS, make sure the applicant has confirmed with the clearinghouse that all of their required documentation has been received. And if the clearinghouse has confirmed all the required documentation has been received and the applicant is still pending past the days allotted by CMS, the applicant may then request a state fair hearing. How will I be notified whether I have been approved or denied for KanCare services? The person who applied will be notified by letter if their application has been approved or denied. What if I am denied and believe it was due to a mistake? Well, you have a couple of options. Option one, if you contact the clearinghouse and let them know that you feel there was an issue with the processing of the application and ask them to review that specific issue, they may review the application again. If any issues are found, they will be corrected and they will resubmit the application for redetermination. The option two is you could request a state fair hearing. If you would like to learn more about this option, please contact our office, the KanCare Ombudsman Office, at 1-855-643-8180. When to request a state fair hearing. An application or renewal denial letter will also note that the applicant or member has the option to a hearing if they feel they have cause. So if you believe you've waited too long for your application to process, or if you believe you were denied in error, you can request a state fair hearing. The reasoning, however, and the supporting documentation for a hearing needs to show that the consumer, the applicant, was denied or not renewed because the state did not follow the rules in processing the application, rather than show the reasons why a person needs KanCare. So if you are requesting a state fair hearing because you feel you've been waiting too long for your application to process, well, did you send in all the documentation that is required to process your application? And has the state gone over the allotted number of days CMS allows them to process their application? Or did they deny your application and you see that they made a mistake? Maybe they said your income was too high and you have no income. You ask them to review that, and if they still disagree with you and you believe that's a mistake, you're going to get the documentation that proves it's a mistake, and that is what you would need to show at the hearing. If you'd like help understanding how to complete a KanCare application, the next few liaison training videos go over a line-by-line guide of the KanCare application for the elderly and persons with disabilities. There will also be a printable line-by-line application guide available in this section. If you're a KanCare applicant or member and you're needing help to resolve a KanCare issue, we are here to assist you. Also, if you're a provider assisting someone or a family member or a neighbor and you're trying to help a KanCare applicant or member, we are here to help you also. Give us a call. Our toll-free number is 1-855-643-8180. Again, that's 1-855-643-8180, or email us at kancare.ombudsman@ks.gov.